Dr. Solla Madri, he is a professor of cardiology, Solla Madri. First, when there is a block in the coronary artery, the balloon pot open பண்ணுவாங்க. So the rectal கொஞ்சம் பெருசாயிடும். So but blood vessels are like elastic rubber band. It will just close sometimes. அது prevent பண்ணதுக்கு தான் we used to do put a stent. Stent means a spring. ஒரு பேனோட ball பேனோட spring மாதிரி. அந்த spring அங்க போட்டாச்சுன்னா vessel collapse ஆகாது. அது called stent. But the stent-க்கு ரொம்ப ப்ராப்ளம் இருக்கு. Stent இருந்தாச்சுன்னா there is a 5 to 10% chance that அந்த stent-க்குள்ளால clot வந்துடும். Stent later திருப்பி block ஆயிடும். இதொன்னும் ஸ்டெண்ட் ஒன்றும் போகாம எப்படி இந்த ரத்தக்குள்ள ரிப்பேர் பண்ண முடியும்? That is the new innovation called drug-coated balloon or medicated balloons. அதாவது ரத்தக்குள்ள full open பண்ணி வச்சு அதுக்கப்புறம் இந்த balloon போட்டு open பண்ணிடும். The balloon the balloon is coated with a drug, a healing drug, and the drug will get smeared or get painted to the vessel wall. So that திருப்பி அது block ஆகாது, அங்க thrombosis பண்ணாது. Secondly, if you put a stent, அங்க ஒரு spring போட்டாச்சுன்னா blood vessel will dilate and contract depending upon the physiological need. Sometimes the contact sometimes like the rubber band. If you put a stent and the function போயிடும், it will be just like a PVC pipe. If you do a drug-coated balloon, அது ஆகாது, அந்த பிரச்சனை இல்லை. It will respond to your physiological needs. Secondly, stent போட்டாச்சுன்னா you have to take blood thinning medicine 1 year or sometimes lifelong. So blood thinning medicine எடுத்தோன்னா சில patient will develop bleeding and some surgery you have to stop it for 5 days. Elderly people bleeding for ulcer, lot of things can happen. இதுக்கு short course of antiplatelet blood thinning medicine needed. 3 months, 6 months is more than enough. See, that is the advantage. ஒரு foreign body இருக்காது, அந்த stent related issues இருக்காது, plus the blood thinning medicine dose கம்மி பண்ணும். இந்த balloon அங்க போட்டு ஓபன் பண்ணிட்டு அந்த drug எல்லாம் உள்ளால போச்சுன்னா balloon will deflate the balloon and take it out.
Stent போட்ட பிறகு after some time the vessels will reduce, the balloon will reduce ஆகாது future
இல்ல stent balloon போட்டு balloon first ஒரு balloon போட்டு full open பண்ணுவாங்க. இந்த balloon இல்ல, full open பண்ணி விட்டதுக்கு அப்புறம் இந்த balloon. This balloon is not for opening, this balloon is to deliver the drug to the vessel wall. அதாவது எங்க இந்த மெடிசின் டெலிவர் பண்ணணும் அதனோட ஒரு டூல் தான் இந்த balloon.
எல்லா ஆபரேஷன் பண்ணனுமா only complicated பண்ண மட்டும் இது பண்ணனும்?
எல்லா வெசல்ஸ்லயும் பண்ணலாம், but only select it is not an alternative to stent பண்ணிட்டா நான் சில டிசீஸ்ல சில சைட்ஸ்ல, but sometimes for example somebody had a main vessel ஒரு block plus ஒரு branchல இருக்குன்னு வெச்சுக்கோங்க. Main vessel we put a stent and branchல we put a drug-coated balloon. Secondly, sometimes the vessel, you know, the rectal size from origin to the end is not the same. It is tapering like this. So in tapering proximal part we put the stent, distal we put a drug-coated balloon. Thirdly, in India there is a very high incidence of diabetes. Diabetic people who have diffuse disease, multiple disease, small vessels எல்லாம் அப்படிப்பட்ட person that stent, small stent போட்டாச்சுன்னா திருப்பி block ஆகிறதுக்கு chance ஜாஸ்தி. Some patients the drug-coated balloons are very useful. Artery, there is some injury to the vessel wall, and the injury heal பண்ணதுக்கு தான் the healing drug கொடுக்குது. Once it is healed, the drug will disappear after 60 to 90 days. அது போதும். ட்ரக்ஸோட எஃபெக்ட், அந்த ட்ரக்ஸோட எஃபெக்ட் இஸ் only for 60 to 90 days. அதுக்கப்புறம் ட்ரக்ஸோட எஃபெக்ட் இருக்காது, பட் அது போயிடும். அதுக்குள்ளால ஆர்டரிஸ் ரீமாடல், ஜஸ்ட் லைக் இந்த கையில் ஒரு இன்ஜுரி வந்து அது ஹீல் ஆகிற மாதிரி. அதுக்கப்புறம் அங்கே ட்ரெஸ் ஒன்றும் பண்ண தேவையில்லை. லைக் தட். எக்ஸாக்ட் டியூரேஷன், எக்ஸாக்ட் restenotic rate with drug-coated balloons.
The restenotic rate we are study published, and it depends on the lesion, but I would say between 5 and 10%.
Almost equal to a stent.
Almost equal to a stent. The only difference is that you do not have a foreign body, and the re-narrowing is easier to be treated because when you have a metal and re-narrowing is more complex to treat in-stent restenosis compared to DCB restenosis.
What is the chance of a tear of the artery wall when you use a balloon over a stent? Suppose you are inserting a balloon for the second time, which is what happens when you do this. The foot must have already, the foot vessels must have already seen some kind of injury. So when you keep pushing it in, what is the chance? Does it increase the risk compared to the stent in this case? And second question, I just wanted to know what is the cost difference between a drug-eluting stent and a drug-coated balloon?
The first, when you do balloon inside an old stent, the chance of having a problem are very small.
Okay.
So the only chance is that the result may not be so good because you have sometimes so much proliferation, so much scarring that you may even have to place a second stent, and sometimes the third time a third stent. So that's the reason why the restenosis in a stent may not be so benign and so easy to be treated. I have some unique patients that have even 4 or 5 stents, one on top of each other, because of repeated renarrowing. The second question about the cost.
Probably Indian.
In India, the cost is the same. Cost of the stent and balloon is the same. See, still this is a novel technique. This is an uncharted sea. There's a lot of research and studies going on. And Professor Colombo is also doing a lot of studies on drug-coated stents with multi-center randomized controlled trials. So we have to wait and watch for the result. The stent has been there for the past 30 years. But this also we have to see the results. But it is very, very promising, especially in Indian context, where the vessels are smaller.
Stents are relatively new compared to the bare metal stents. So isn't it easy?
Drug-coated stents are not new. It is there for the past 20 years.
Yeah.
Drug-coated stents are there for the past 20 years. We know. This is drug-coated balloons.
And this
because
is for how many years, doctor?
the
4 or
drug-coated
5
balloon,
years.
4
4 or 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
But they became more common in the last 2 years.
We need long-term data. That's only the time will tell. But there's a lot of studies going on in different kinds of patients, diabetic patients, bifurcation lesions, and calcific lesions. Lot of things.
But,
small vessels, everything.
The result, if we do a study and we compare drug-eluting stent to drug-coated balloons, the advantage will come, if it comes, after 3 or 4 years. So, because the immediate results are going to be good for both, but the fact that you do not have a foreign body will be seen after 2 or 3 years. So that's the reason why these studies are complex, because every time you do a study you want a result immediately. You have to be patient and keep on following the patient for 3 or 4 years. So the study becomes complex, expensive, and not easy, because you cannot lose follow-up from patients, otherwise the results become not validated.
One more thing. If you put a stent, as I said, there is 5 to 10% chance of stent clotting and then restenosis come. And then if you put and then the vessel will lose its normal physiological contraction line. Everything can be alleviated, can be eliminated if you put a drug-coated balloon. Secondly, if you put a drug-coated balloon, the restenosis, because after a drug-coated balloon application and the restenosis after a stent application, it is different. It is very easy to treat a restenosis of the drug-coated balloon, but the restenosis of the stent is not very easy. Bifurcation lesion, there's a main vessel, put a branch. Main vessel you put the stent, and bifurcation, that side branch you put the drug-coated balloons. Plus patients with restenosis, already you put a stent, the stent has restenosis. Today we did the case like that. Again we cannot put once again stent, the whole artery will become a metal. So there you put a open with a drug-coated balloon. Today we did a fantastic case morning with professor. It was like a case. Already stented, bifurcation, it has restenosis. We just opened it with a drug-coated balloon. Didn't put additional metal to that.
So for 2.2
Of today, I will be a little bit technical, but I hope not too much. Angioplasty, we all know, is a balloon dilate an artery which is narrow and compresses the plaque and makes the artery large again. This was invented basically by Dr. Andreas Grunzig in 1977 with a lot of advantages. Nevertheless, and I was part of the beginning of angioplasty, not rarely the balloon created a fracture in the artery and the artery occluded. And that's the reason why when we were doing angioplasty in 1981-82, we always had bypass surgery readily available. and we were sending a patient to an emergency bypass at least one time a week. So it was really, and when the patient went to bypass, was usually an emergency with all the consequences of emergency procedure. Then came the stent. The stent was an unbelievable innovation, but not necessarily because prevented re-narrowing, prevented restenosis. Restenosis is something bad, but it's not dramatic. The beauty of the stent is that when the artery was getting closed because dissected, placing a stent immediately the artery stayed open and we could avoid emergency bypass surgery. So stent saved lives. Then we had the problem of stent thrombosis. I was contributor with many other doctors. The discoveries are always a group discovery. It's like an army. There is one leading the flag, but there is a lot of other people behind the flag. So I have to thank many other people that contributed. The stent resolved the problem of occlusion and mitigated the problem of restenosis because there was still some late narrowing around the metal. Then came drug-eluting stent. Drug-eluting stent means that the stent has on top of metal a special medication named sirolimus, limus, various brands, that prevent re-narrowing by decreasing the hyperplasia, by decreasing the scar formation around the stent. And this was a major innovation because the re-narrowing after stenting was about 30%. With this medicated stent went down to 10%, maybe even less. And a lot of innovation, so 3 milestones: angioplasty balloon, stent made of metal, and stent with the drug. But as I said, 10% is not zero. And when you implant stents in diabetics, long stents, the number 10% becomes 20%. So we are a little bit back to the past. We solved the problem, but not completely. And what can we do? We can implant additional stents, but one stent on top of the other is not always a good idea. And the stent is always a foreign body. If it's a very short foreign body in length, it's okay. But when you implant very long stents, you convert a flexible artery like the coronary into a rigid tube, which is not what the physiology has made the artery built. So now what came into our field in the last 2 or